A reading from the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. Brothers and sisters, Jews demand signs, and Greeks look for wisdom. But we proclaim Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. But to those who are called, Jews and Greeks alike, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than human strength. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Conventional wisdom would say that Anna Maria Schmidt, if she wanted to live a happy, fulfilled, loving life, was born in the wrong place at the wrong time. Admittedly, I don't know that I would choose to be born in Czechoslovakia right before the outbreak of World War II. And she encountered the difficulty of her situation for the first time when the Nazis invaded her small, peaceful village as a young girl. They came in, boarded up the churches, forbid the practice of the faith, but they prayed anyway. They went to Mass anyway. And so at one point, she was among 75 people who were lined up and told that they needed to renounce their faith, to stop practicing going to church and follow Hitler, or they would be killed. And that day, 75 people were shot. And she fell to the ground and realized that she had just been grazed. She was still very alive. And she was not grateful to be alive. Instead, she was actually very, very angry. And she got up, and she was filled with this vitriol for these Nazis that had stolen the peace away from her life. She said, "You lousy soldiers, you want to take over the world? You can't even shoot straight." And her life became that tension between hatred and love, of learning to be a Catholic, learning to preach the gospel in the midst of a very difficult world, learning to balance the bitterness and mercy, being prayerful and being angry all at the same time, and working that out. What does it mean? She went on, she stayed with her family, with her people, and went to college in Prague, studied to be a surgeon. In the middle of class, the SS came in and took the entire class to Auschwitz. And there she was confronted and lived firsthand the horrors of the concentration camps before being taken to serve as a nurse, to care directly for the enemy on the battle lines. And eventually she fell under the care of a guard who she described as the most evil man she ever met in her entire life. They called him Satan. He caught her and a friend Christina praying one day, and he literally beat Christina to death. She says she was so angry, so bitter over this, so filled with rage that she wanted to kill this man. In fact, she and the women with her decided to go out planning how they could do this. But in the midst of it, she was caught, and he beat her too. And as she thought she was dying, she said to herself, "I cannot die with this hatred in my heart. I cannot do it." So she turned to him and said, "I forgive you in the name of Jesus Christ, because I love you in Jesus' love." And after spending a few days comatose, she woke up. And she found this Nazi sitting beside her, saying, "Who is this Jesus? Tell me about him." And he demanded to know, who is he? She said at that point she just wanted to die. She didn't want to deal with the pain anymore. She was not some pious Christian that was determined to evangelize the Gentiles. But he demanded to know, what was it that made her say that? And so she shared with him what we believe, preached the gospel. She said in time he was baptized, became a Roman Catholic, and became docile as a lamb. He became a protector of all these women under his care. And she went on to share her story of learning to love in the most difficult of circumstances. To preach the gospel, to proclaim Christ crucified, is to proclaim this mercy. We read the story of his life. It is one of someone forgiving, offering a loving forgiveness to the world. He doesn't come for the healed, the healthy. He comes for those in need of grace, in need of something. We see he acts with compassion, driven to help people, and that compassion leads him to the cross. And there the compassion flourishes, because in an unjustified death, in something that is unfair, he is not bitter, but rather Christ says, "Father, forgive them. They know not what they do." We don't need the Nazis, and we don't need Roman soldiers for us to learn the importance of forgiveness in our lives. We have each other, and we are quite capable of hurting one another even when we do not know what we're doing. We are very, very capable of it. In fact, I guarantee you that at one point, if it hasn't happened yet, someone you live with will offend you, will hurt you, will say something rude, will upset you, will ignore your needs, will find a way to push your buttons, and really have no idea that they're doing it. They won't mean to. It'll happen. As James Peter reminded us, that's not a threat, it's just a promise. We're sinful people. And then in turn, we'll be encountered with a church that also is not perfect, that is still healing from a sexual abuse crisis. We'll encounter a government that is not perfect, communities that are not perfect, that make wrong choices. And how will we respond? How will we answer? But ultimately, we cannot allow our egos to become so elevated that we think, well, I've been wronged, I've been hurt, so I am entitled to act out of my anger. I'm entitled to do as I please. That is not strength. And we cannot also think that, oh, I'm not really hurt, everything's okay. We can't deny the pain, because that's not wisdom. Jesus didn't say on the cross, oh, it's all okay. I know if you knew who I was, you wouldn't do this. It's no big deal, you just don't understand, that's all right. No, forgiveness acknowledges that damage has been done. It doesn't hide that. It acknowledges the reality that something wrong has happened, but it refuses to settle for the limitations of sin. We have to step past that. We have to push through the difficulties, and we have to let our pride die. And in that way, mercy for us is in and of itself a crucifixion, because our pride must die. We have to let go of things that we really don't want to let go of. We have to let the past go, even when it seems like that's what's strengthening us, that's what's supporting us, that's what's consoling us. We have to cling to the wisdom and the strength of God, because mercy is difficult. It's not always easy. It makes us vulnerable. It brings us to be the least of these, to be the little ones. But this is the proclaiming of Christ crucified. This is what it means to live out his gospel, to share that good news, to preach it to the world, to be a living witness to the strength and the love of God. Because it looks pretty foolish some days. The world can righteously say, well, this looks absurd, it looks unreasonable, it looks weak, it looks pathetic. I don't want that. But at the end of the day, our choice to be forgiving, to allow our mercy to change our communities, to transform us, to make us into holier people, to make our community into a sanctified one, to change a Nazi guard, to transform the world. It's within the nature of mercy itself, because it's transformative. It's not selfish. It's not self-centered. It's not oriented to my own good. It is life-giving. And ultimately, that is what we're called to be freed. The mercy God offers us is for the sake of the release of sins, to be with him, to live eternally, to have joy and to know it to the full. So let us be people of mercy, to proclaim Christ crucified, to proclaim that mercy to all those around us, because through it, we are being made holy, and we are brought to life.